Bring this meeting to order. So if you all settle down for a second, I would like to bring the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. We're going to start with invocation by Mr. Collins and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller. So if you all please rise.
Please stand, bow your heads. As we begin to take steps in the direction of our purpose, we ask that you give us wisdom. We ask in faith that your word promise us, that you give us wisdom in every small and large decision as we step into our purpose. We thank you that we don't have to rely on our own understanding, as we know that your wisdom will guide us to our exact purpose. Thank you that we can come to the throne and ask anything. We ask your guidance as we thank you for the gift and power of the Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Mr. Miller, are there any agendas to the, or are there any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to open the floor up to public comment. This public comment is going to be general public comment. It will not be the public comment having to do with the hunting ordinance. That will come later, and we will open the public comment at that time for that public hearing. So is there anybody here for public comment? Mr. Shelton.
I think it's on now. I'm Don Shelton, 9430 Ashburn Court, President King George Historical Society. This year, we're going to be celebrating 25 years of the Historical Society's museum over here. So what I'd like to hope the consensus from you guys, yay or nay, on whether you would support the new museum for another 25 years. So we're going to have a good party by this year on it, but ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Anyone else for general public comment?
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes, 10263 Roosevelt. Well, first I want to welcome Mr. Terry Collins. This is my second time that I see him here. And I want to thank the supervisors for the work you are doing for the county. The people of King George County put their trust in you. I came tonight to remind you that the people of King George are worried about the rise in the real estate assessments that went too high. I don't think the people that did the assessment did a good job. In 2016, somebody came door to door and left a paper that confirmed the visit to my property. Please, I want you to remember the cost of everything is rising. Even the dollar store has nothing for $1 anymore. But also I want to thank you, Mr. Chris Clark, for the job he's doing in the Parks and Recreation. He does a lot of programs for the children. He does a lot of programs for the old people, me, but he does a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lavelle. Anyone else? Seeing none, Mr. Dines, I think we have someone online. Okay. No comment. Okay, thank you. Anybody have correspondence to be read? Okay. Oh. Okay, Mr. Collins. Okay, thank you. All right. Moving on to public comment. Moving on to reports of members of the board. Mrs. Bender.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. Shelton, Ms. Lavelle for coming and speaking to the community. Thank you very much for being engaged with our citizens. First up, I would like to mention a concern that was brought to my attention, and I talked to our chair today about this, and I need to look at the rest of the board to see if maybe there's a consensus to have our staff look a little bit more into this, is Eden Drive. A resident had contacted me about the amount of traffic that is now on Eden Drive, especially with Oakwood Estates and Eden View, and the speed that goes through there. And I will tell you that myself, who lives near Eden Drive, can hear people racing at night on that road. So I talked to Mr. Beal and the sheriff about it, and it's a little bit of a complicated, not complicated, but very easy process, looking at crash data and a traffic study to see if that is something that is warranted. So I was wondering if my colleagues were interested in at least having staff look into that possibility of maybe just assessing if that is something that maybe we need to do due to the traffic on that small road, is maybe making the speed limit consistent and one speed.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much. We had our meeting with GWRC, the George Washington Regional Commission. Ms. Kupka and I serve on that last Monday. And we went over the normal things about transportation and smart scale projects. But one of the things that was interesting between that meeting and FAMPO, the supervisors from Stafford and Spotsylvania were talking to me about coordinating the possibility if we all come to understanding, because when we try to hire police officers and teachers, we all compete against each other, and in the end, we all lose. And I don't know if that's possible, if we can come to an understanding, but it's actually a good thought, and it's a valid concern, and I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I think there's an acknowledgement that maybe we could all work together so we don't keep taking from one another, and we work together so that our regional efforts improve all around, and one county is not shorter than the other county, because it's very hard to compete, especially when you have all those Northern Virginia counties when you're trying to have sheriffs, deputies, and everything. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Granger.
Sir, thank you. Mr. Shelton, thank you for coming out and sharing about the 25th anniversary. Ms. Lavelle as well, thank you for coming out. Thank you for comments about the tax rate. Obviously, that is something we are taking into account as we continue to figure out what the budget's going to be and what the tax rate is going to be advertised at. Always thinking about it has an impact, I know, on all the citizens, including the 5 of us up here as well. So we do take that very seriously, as well as thank you for sharing your comments about Mr. Clark with Parks and Rec. It's always nice to hear positive comments. I'm not surprised, but it is nice to hear them as well about our staff. And so thank you for sharing that as well. On Thursday, March 10th, I attended the Comrail meeting. A couple of different briefs came out of that. They did have a nice Middleton Bridge update. In particular, I'd bring up, they did ask to try to get out the fact that they're asking for a no wake through in the area of the bridge through September for construction purposes, as they're out there on the floats and doing the construction. It could be very dangerous. Even small wakes could cause danger for the construction workers. So please be aware of that if you're out there, and take that into account, and please be careful and not to endanger anyone else. Also had a pretty interesting brief from the Indian Head director about talking about obviously we all, I'm sure, are aware of a lot of strife going on in the world, and nations maybe being bad actors. And obviously those nations are also working to develop weapons and develop superiority over others through those weapons. And so Indian Head shared a couple of those kinds of activities that are going on. In particular, they brought up a couple of ones that weren't interesting and scary. China has a aircraft carrier killer missile. So the whole idea is supposed to be able to take out an aircraft carrier with one missile. Some other ones as well that were out there as well. So I mean, they're working to develop these kinds of weapons to use against other nations, obviously. And so Indian Head as well, our nation does spend a significant amount of money in our own defense and developing our own. So they did discuss a lot of the work that they're doing there, and in particular what they do is development and fabrication of the explosives. And so those would then obviously be used for the defense of our nation. And so it is good work that they're doing. It's important work. That's at Indian Head, which is obviously across the bridge in Maryland, but it is also part of NSASP, which is part of the Dahlgren area as well, that campus. And so it is important to remember, those individuals are doing good work, and our military out there trying to defend us and our rights. So, I appreciate that. It's kind of sobering and scary, but it's important as well. Other than that, I would like to say thank you to staff, in particular for the last couple of weeks as we've been going through our our work sessions for budget and trying to figure out what the way forward is. I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Benson, who came out on the 30th to discuss the school's budget. Really appreciate him providing the binders in order to help give us more information and give us the opportunity to have a little bit of more time to go through it as we be able to ask our questions. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mrs. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Shelton, for coming out and providing your comment, and Ms. Lavelle also for your comment. Wednesday, March 16th and Wednesday, March 23rd and Wednesday, March 30th attended the county budget work sessions, and I reiterate my colleagues' thanks to staff for your work on crafting the budget process, and thank you to Dr. Benson and Dr. Boyd for joining us on March 30th to present the school board budget request, as well as to the school board members who attended that meeting as well. As a note, we were contacted by a resident of the Green Heights neighborhood regarding a request to have the neighborhood roads brought into the state maintenance system. And Mr. Granger replied directly to the citizen. Unfortunately, when the neighborhood was created, it was not with the intention of having it entered into the state system. To do so now would require a significant effort in terms of road improvements at homeowners' expense, as well as obtaining legal easements and having them recorded for all residents. So if this is something that the neighborhood would like to pursue, please reach back out to us for more guidance on the process. And I would like to make the board and the public aware of the passing of a longtime volunteer for King George Fire Rescue over the weekend. Wilson Willie Farrell was a volunteer who joined the department in 1990. He became a lifetime member in 2012 and previously served as secretary and was also the volunteer assistant chief. He was also a longtime employee at Birchwood Power Facility, and Company 1 is now draped in black bunting this week in memory of Chief Farrell. And then a couple of volunteer opportunities coming up. The Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail is hosting a cleanup Saturday, April 16th at 10 a.m. at the King George American Legion on Dahlgren Road. The Rotary Club of King George Dahlgren will host a litter cleanup on Route 3 Saturday, May 14th, beginning at 9 a.m., starting at Smoot Library. And once again, a reminder, fire safety, the 4 p.m. burn ban continues across the Commonwealth through April 30th, and we are still seeing lots of calls for service for our fire department regarding illegal burns, so please be mindful of that. Thank you. That is all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sheldon, thank you for coming out tonight, keeping us informed in this historical society. Mrs. Lovell, we've known each other for over 40 years and we volunteered together at Parks and Rec. It's nice to see you out and thank you for welcoming me on board. Mr. Clark, congratulations on public observing your work in public. I will be attending the NJRTC ball on Saturday night, which is a great opportunity to watch our young high school group exchange command. Also, I will be going to the Chamber of Commerce Gala in Fredericksburg. We do compete for police officers and teachers in King George, and we have worked hard in King George to make those salaries be able to compete with our neighbors. But Stafford and Spotsylvania and King George, if I had a choice as a police officer or teacher to go work and live there, it would be King George by a long shot. So the people that come to King George to work here they want to come here for what we have, our lifestyle we have. So we hope we'll continue to keep folks there. The Service Authority continues to have issues, recent issue on Hop Yard. And I would like to know the impact on the ratepayers for the RFQ that's on the fast track for the private company. I would hope that we'd be more transparent in the authority. The meeting that was tonight was not publicized on the website, which allows very little public input. To continue looking at the options, we need to continue looking at the options instead of going down just one path and not paying attention to all the options available. Tonight, the Service Authority approved a over $1 million expenditure on the first reading, which is the first time, even though it was on the CIP, this was the first reading in public for the approval of that funds, and they approved it. So I'm still concerned about the ratepayers continually pay more every year. They're going to, in June, they're going to discuss rates increases again in June. So I would hope that there would be a little bit of a slowdown in this fast forward to try to take over the water authority. Thank you for your opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. Shelton, thanks for coming out, and we'll see what we can do about, continuing to support the museum. It's a great little place, especially for folks that have never been there. It's definitely worth seeing some of King George heritage. Ms. Lavelle, thanks for coming out like usual, and thanks for your continued support for the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Collins. And we have a lot of ideas about trying to keep taxes down. We're all taxpayers just like everyone else. So we're kicking some ideas around. So we'll see what we can do. And I appreciate the kudos for Mr. Clark. He definitely takes care of everybody from the pediatrics to the geriatrics and everyone in between. So he does a great job. Thank you, Mr. Clark. 23rd, attended the Rappahannock River Basin. It was held up in Fredericksburg this quarter. They spoke a lot about the tree canopy bill that was passed down in Richmond about keeping tree canopies here in Virginia and having the counties have some say to create their own tree canopy ordinances. They talked to the senators and delegates were there. There were some new ones there, and they also spoke about what came out of the General Assembly this year. Matthew Lohr is the new Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry. He was there as a key speaker. Also with the state forester, they spoke about healthy forests create healthy waters, which, here we are in King George surrounded by two bodies of water, the Rap and the Potomac. And they also then gave an update on the iFlow sensing project, which is a flood warning system that VDEM uses for floods. That same day, we attended a budget work session with the rest of my colleagues. And then again, as they all said, thank you to Dr. Benson and thank you to the other school board members that did show their support and at that budget meeting. That's the end of my report, but I would like to appoint Lisa Pitts to the Department of Social Services Board.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And I'll send a brief write-up to all of you and staff about who she is, and so you have a little bit of an idea who she is. I would also like to get the board's consensus on the possibility of having staff look at starting to do away with our Go meeting platform. I've spoken to IT and staff about the the go-to platform. It's a kind of an unreliable platform. We also have YouTube as well, which is a much better platform. And it's just a process. It's also $6,000 a year that we would be saving because we're doubled up. We're doing YouTube and Go meetings at the same time. So, we're kind of wasting a $6,000 thing. So I'd like to try to get a consensus of everybody to have staff start to look at phasing it out and just using the YouTube platform for our meetings. And the subcommittees, some of the subcommittees would get onto Microsoft Team meetings and stuff. So they would still have a way to get into their meetings.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Sure.
So I use the go-to meetings every week. During the pandemic, they were extremely useful, but I watched the Planning Commission. I watch all the public meetings. YouTube, you can't get it live. I've tried to get it live, but it doesn't really come on to YouTube until like the next day. So I would like to have it to stay with the go-to meeting, and because it allows you to make comments in real time on the go-to meeting. So that would be my stance on that. I think it's a very good platform. It's very useful, and a lot of folks that are elderly or disabled that can't get to meetings and so forth, or for other things, you can go to meeting in Arizona if you're on travel. So the YouTube is the one that's not reliable. So that's my stance on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else?
I guess I would like to see more information from Mr. Dines about what other platforms are able to, have committee members be able to call in and be able to be part of the meeting. What is the prices for different options? I think just using Microsoft Team might not be the right answer. I know there is an expense to go to meetings, but maybe there are other options. I would like a more thorough report on it.
Right, that's what I was just saying, just to, have them start looking at it about phasing out and to start relying more on the YouTube and Team. So that's just to direct them to start looking into it.
Do we pay a fee for the teams currently? I don't know off the top of my head. No. Okay. I do have a lot of experience with using Teams in regards to my professional career. I find it to be a very reliable platform as well. So and it does allow for your real time. I appreciate what Mr. Collins is saying. I did attend, I attended our last board meeting. And it is, the YouTube was a couple minutes behind. And so I didn't use the GoToMeeting either though. I used my phone and I called in, and then I would just follow along on because I had the agenda as well up. So that's what I did in order to participate remotely. But if we have Teams and it's currently being used, I would be willing to entertain looking to remove the GoToMeeting and maybe use those platforms instead.
Skupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would be willing to entertain. I'd like to have staff bring forward all of the options. The couple of times that I've been away and tried to log in to GoToMeeting, I was not able to use it to participate in the meeting. I had to just call in on my county cell phone. So I would be interested in seeing what all of the options are before making any decision. And I just want to make sure whatever option we have does afford our citizens to provide public comment, because we saw during the age of COVID, a lot of folks didn't want to go out, but we still want to be able to hear from them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think we might be on the downhill slide from the COVID thing. And, people can come here the old fashioned way and give public comment right here. For the folks that for some reason are out of town or they can't, we will definitely have a couple of options, call in, YouTube. So, we're not going to leave people out in the cold. So, Mr. Miller, if you could get with Mr. Clark and Jeff back there and talk to them about, getting some options for us and see which one is the best. Okay, thank you. Also, I would like to talk to the board and get consensus about speaking with VDOT to start the process of looking into banning tractor trailers from Dahlgren Road from 301 in Dahlgren to Kings Highway. I was reading an article in the newspaper the other day in Spotsylvania that Spotsylvania was doing it up there for an area up there for no through trucks. And I remember back in the day, the board previous to my time being here looked at it. And I think the answer that was given to me was that it interfered with interstate travel or commerce or something. So when I was reading this article, I reached out to Mr. Beal at VDOT and highlighted the article, sent it to him. And he said, no, it's actually, it's fine. And it's actually an easy process where the governing body submits a request to the local VDOT office, which then goes up their chain. They do a traffic study. They go through an executive action. And then they come back and they finally do a public hearing. And if everything works out between VDOT and the public hearing, that VDOT would come and put the signs out, and then it would be a no through trucks on Dahlgren Road. It would not, impact trucks or folks that live on Dahlgren Road that have trucks. And this is a problem that I've been hearing for 25 years about trash trucks and tractor trailers, using that as a cut through from 301 to 3. And it was interesting while I was on the phone, I was at Wawa and I watched, 3 Lucky Dog trash trucks, headed up the road, and they were using that as a cut through. And as we all know, and everybody knows, that Dahlgren Road is just too small of a road for that. I did speak to Sheriff Giles, and he was all in favor of it and would support that idea as well. And so that's it. So I'd like to get consent from the board to have staff, start looking at talking to VDOT about this process.
Yes.
I agree. The Dahlgren Road continues to be more residential and residential subdivisions out there. My experience over the last 30 years in King George, that road is terrible for trucks and shouldn't, tractor trailers other than folks that live on that road really shouldn't be operating on that road. So I full-heartedly agree with that, Mr. Stonehill.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, I will send you those forms and the process and get with, I guess, Mr. Beal about that.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And that is all I have. Moving on to the consent agenda, do we have a motion?
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Constitutional officers report. Do we have anybody, constitutional officers? Seeing none. Report from the county attorney, Mrs. Lackey.
First thing I just wanted to mention, just for everyone's awareness, is that tomorrow I am participating as a presenter in a continuing legal education seminar on stormwater management and the role of localities in that process. I'm one of 3 presenters on that topic. And then the other main issue, the agenda item, is discussion of a possible golf cart ordinance update. A few months ago now, the Fairview Beach Residents Association prepared some proposed changes to the golf cart ordinance. And so they were pretty comprehensive, so I wanted to go ahead and give the board an update on what those might look like. And I also actually had some recommendations of my own. So that seemed to be the main complaint from the Fairview Beach Residents Association was that the ordinance requires on an annual basis some kind of certification or ratification that, yes, they do still want to maintain golf cart usage, and in doing so, they're obligated to check out the golf carts of residents who wish to use their golf carts, make sure they're street legal, make sure they have the required safety equipment and things of that nature. In COVID, it was a little bit confusing to them as to what the process was. Last year, they ratified just by an exchange of emails with community development. So that seemed to be their main motivating issue was how that process could be streamlined or better articulated. So that, is a seemingly a pretty straightforward issue. But the other changes are more significant. They would require also updates to an existing agreement of the same type with Potomac Landing. We also might need to get some feedback from VDOT on the required signage at both locations, Fairview Beach and in Potomac Landing. They're supposed to have signs every quarter mile, I believe, and I'm not sure that that signage is meeting what the agreement states it should. But I don't know that that's a VDOT requirement, so I would recommend that that be something that we get some feedback on. The other issues, the main issues that were raised by Fairview Beach Residents Association were that they would like, instead of an obligation for them to continue to maintain the existing signs, they would like to see the county maintain the signs, but they would reimburse the county. I was a little bit wondered where that came from, but actually the state authorizing statute is kind of framed that way, and a lot of other jurisdictions do it that way. I looked at an ordinance from Westmoreland County where they have a process where the county administrator notifies the association 30 days before any intended work on signage, and the community association or residents association then has to pay the funds up front prior to the work being performed, and that's an obligation of their agreement. So that's certainly something that could be changed. Again, that would also affect Potomac Landing if it was an ordinance change of general applicability. And in terms of a streamlined approach for ratification, they do have their agreements are recorded in the land records, so they're binding agreements, and they're very much a public record. But because the ordinance does require an annual ratification, I would suggest that maybe the board might consider some periodic basis of ratification, so you make sure that the people who are on the board of the Residents Association, as that might change, that they're aware of what their obligations are and are meeting those obligations. So I would suggest perhaps maybe a ratification about every 5 years rather than every year. So that would be a possible change. And then the additional changes that I noticed myself just going through the ordinance, since it hasn't been looked at in a number of years, were that the state authorizing statute refers to both golf carts and utility vehicles. Now, they don't mean ATVs. They don't mean all-terrain vehicles. The code is very specific that what they're talking about are things very similar to golf carts, but are not intended for recreation. They're more for landscaping, security, the stuff you might see in like a parking garage. So the ordinance could be changed to also allow those types of vehicles on roads that are designated for golf carts. Could also be used by utility vehicles, again, not ATVs, but more the things that are similar to golf carts that are used for landscaping and for security. I would also recommend that if the ordinance is updated, that specifically the ordinance include the state provisions of the findings that have to be made as to the safety and traffic conditions in order to designate any new golf cart locations. It has to be on a road that's a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less. But there's also some other traffic findings that need to be found. So I would recommend that that also be considered if any ordinance amendments are considered. And also in just looking at some of the ordinances from our sister jurisdictions, it's not required, but I saw many that include a disclaimer of liability, where if the county says you can have golf carts, we're not saying, we're not giving any assurance that it's safe for golf carts, or that that there's any county liability. I mean, that goes without saying because of sovereign immunity, but it never hurts to put that in writing. So that's an additional consideration of something else that could be considered if there is an appetite for ordinance amendments.
Questions for Mrs. Lackey? Mr. Collins?
So is it my understanding that they wanted to change the age from 18 to 16 to operate a golf cart in the community?
Yes, I believe that is an additional change that is proposed, that is supported by the state code, but not required. That's an option to the locality if you wanted to reduce to the regular driving age and not have any not require, that someone be 18 years old to drive a golf cart. And this is on public roads only, I should clarify.
Doesn't the code say 35 miles an hour or less? Not 25 miles per hour or less?
I don't know if I have that in front of me, but there is you're correct, there's a speed limit, and I can't recall off the top of my head what the speed limit requires. It is actually, it's the current ordinance says 25 miles per hour or less. And I believe
County
that
ordinance 25, but the state code that it falls under is 35 miles an hour or less. Can't cross any road onto any road that's 35 or more. Isn't that correct?
I think the road crossings can be at a slightly higher speed, but I can check on that. I think it is 25 miles per hour or less.
So like I can't go from Fairview to across 218. That's a 55 mile an hour road.
Right.
The on the UTVs and the golf carts, isn't it in the ordinance in the state code that it has to be under so many CCs in order to qualify? So you can have like they call them mules and so forth. Some of them are under a certain amount of CCs, like mopeds. So with a moped, is that implied in this ordinance?
It would not, and then a moped, no, it would not.
So if you're going to do UTVs, I think it needs to be under 125 CCs operate.
I don't think the state code includes the power. It does say, I think, that their golf cart can't be modified to exceed the speeds that the manufacturer specifications allow it to drive at.
Right, but in the state code where it defines golf cart in the terminology, it talks about the CCs. So what I'm saying is I don't think we need more than 125 CCs on residential Fairview Beach, Potomac Landing, or anywhere else that wants to be approval. So I can hop up a golf cart to go 45, 50 miles an hour. So what I'm saying is we want to keep them down to where they can't even exceed the speed limit of 25 miles per hour, which pretty much all golf carts are like that now, but you can get them modified right close by to get them to go faster. I am questioning the 18, 16. I know Fairview wants the 16, and I know what, in order to drive a motor vehicle, you have to be 16. But from my experience and maturity with 16-year-olds operating motor vehicles, it's a high level of accident rate on motor vehicles. So I would want the board to consider the 16 and 18, at least get some discussion on that matter. And as far as the signage, it's supposed to be where any crossroad crosses is supposed to be a golf cart sign, then leaving the zone is supposed to be a golf cart sign. And both those areas have been pretty good about taking care of that. And I don't know if they can afford to have the state do that. I agree with the 5 years on the annual renew. Didn't hear in there about the inspections and the liability insurance. That's still valid in that ordinance, right? There's no change in that.
Right, that would require that the Residents Association and the Property Association continue on an annual basis. They'd have to give the sticker or decal to the authorized vehicles.
And there's still an ordinance this ordinance still allows the county, the sheriff's office to enforce that, right?
Correct.
The yearly thing. And they do sign a disclaimer, but I don't know if it is given to the county, but I know that both subdivisions, you sign a disclaimer for any liability that happens on the public roads. So I don't know if that needs to be with the packet or whatever. Anyhow, that's all my comments. When Fairview first started their golf cart thing, I was in Potomac Landing and worked on these things as a homeowner president. So I'm pretty familiar with how all this stuff goes. But I am concerned about the 16-year-old thing. I don't know about you guys.
Questions, comments? Oh, Skevka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, I found the code section 46.2-916.3. Number 1, a golf cart or utility vehicle may be operated only on designated public highways where the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or less. However, a golf cart or utility vehicle may cross a highway at an intersection controlled by a traffic light if the highway has a posted speed limit of no more than 35 miles per hour, and in the town of Colonial Beach may cross any highway at an intersection marked as a golf cart crossing by signs posted by VDOT. So Colonial Beach definitely has some very specific treatment that the code allows them. So as one of the members that brought this forward, I was going to suggest that it was Mr. Collins' predecessor that worked with me on this. So perhaps Mr. Collins and I could set up a meeting to follow up with the requesters from Fairview Beach. And I would appreciate your assistance, Mr. Collins, because I believe they reached out. They tried to get someone from Potomac Landing to work on this too, and we never heard back from anyone. So if it's the will of the board, perhaps Mr. Collins and I know Sheriff Giles met with them at one point. Perhaps we could set up a meeting, you and I, with the requesters to try to come together and figure out where we're at and try to figure out a path forward. Would that be okay, first of all, with you, Mr. Collins?
Yes, ma'am.
And
I'm not on the HOA anymore, so
I got you. I didn't mean to imply that you were, just that we didn't hear anything. We did try, Mr. Bush and I just wanted to make that clear. And then I just want to also note, as far as the future, I believe that Hopyard has also requested looking at this possibility too. So we certainly want to make sure we would take care of whatever we would need to be able to bring it to them eventually too, to your constituents, Mr. Granger.
Yeah.
And that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, there's another subdivision down your road that was very interested in golf carts. The subdivision on the left before you get to your marina. They had
Schooner Circle.
they're interested, so we need to. I'm sure that they want to have it there, and Hop Yard would be a great place for golf carts, really. But it just needs to be, the orders need to be tied up. Thank you.
Okay, if you all want to get together and work on that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to come to our public hearing for this evening. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding permitting the use of rifles of 23 or larger for hunting. I will first ask for the staff report, then I will open up the floor to public comment. When we do open up for public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everybody an opportunity to speak. When you get up to the podium, if you would please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight, depending on information that they receive during public comment. I do have a sign-up sheet that was out front. When we open for public comment, I'll start on the sign-up sheet and work down that sheet. And afterwards, if we have time, if there are other folks that did not sign up, we will get to you afterwards. So, Mrs. Lackey?
So just a quick overview of what the proposed ordinance is. Currently, King George County only allows muzzle-loaded rifles for deer hunting. The amendment would permit deer hunting with any rifle of 23 caliber or larger that's authorized by the state code. It specifically has to be larger than a 22. It would have certain requirements. Hunting would have to be from a stand at least 10 feet above the ground, unless the hunter is disabled and has an exception, has a license issued for that purpose. Live rounds are only permitted when the hunter is located in the stand, and it would have to be subject to all other applicable local ordinances and state laws. The amendment would also allow rifle hunting other than just muzzle-loaded rifles for in-season hunting of groundhogs, or also to protect property from coyotes or agricultural property from deer, elk, or bear. And once again, this is an optional authority. Currently, the county is exercising an option to have this restriction on certain types of weapons for hunting, but it could certainly relax that provision. In order for the local ordinance to take effect for the fall for the next deer hunting season, an ordinance would have to be enacted and communicated to the Department of Wildlife Resources prior to May 1st.
Thank you, Mrs. Lackey. Sergeant Spicazzi is here from the Department of Wildlife Resources. We do have those stats that you sent, and Mr. Dines can just throw those up, and maybe for the folks that can, if you want to come on up to the podium, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if Mr. Dines can throw those up there, and if you could just kind of briefly tell the public of what those are and what they represent.
Working for the Department of Wildlife Resources, we investigate all hunting incidents that occur in the state, and we keep track of the incidents. And what they're showing here is, I don't know what years these were, but the past 3 years, this was in 20. It shows there, you can see the device that was used in particular incidents, and it pretty much shows that with rifles, we don't have that many incidents. People tend to be more careful at what they're shooting. They aim better. The majority of our accidents are, if you look with shotguns, and the majority of the rifle incidents that do take place are what we call self-inflicted, which means that would have happened with a shotgun, a muzzleloader, or the rifle. So you can see there, like on this one here, rifle, the victim suffered trauma from his left foot as a result of a self-inflicted gunshot, which means he did it to himself. So the rifle really had nothing to do with him getting, with the weapon being a rifle, did not cause the incident. It would have happened with a shotgun or muzzleloader or any other rifle. You know, if you have any other. I think over the past 3 years, there was 4 or 5 statewide rifle incidents, and all of them but one was self-inflicted. And the one incident was the bullet shattered on a rock after it was shot, and the fragments ended up hitting the hunter in the face. So it wasn't necessarily the rifle bullet at a distance causing the injury. So, and that's just it's kind of the data, and that's how it's trended my whole career. Any other?
Anybody have any questions for Sergeant Spicazzi? No? Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? No? Okay. So then I will now open the floor to public comment. And first on the list is Don Shelton. And I guess he left. Next. Okay, well. Okay, well, if he shows back up, we'll get to him. Next on the list, Rick Herron.
I'm Rick Herron. I reside at 17067 Nangatico Lane. I want to thank Mr. Stonehill for bringing this up for for questioning and answering and bringing it up for discussion. I'm in favor of the use of a rifle during the general firearms season, requesting that King George County adopts the same regulations as Caroline County. It is legal in Stafford and Spotsylvania to shoot a rifle from the ground to hunt deer. Caroline County adopted these ordinances in the 2021 hunting season. These local ordinances state muzzleloader rifles are permitted during any authorized deer season where firearms are permitted. That's the same ordinance as King George County currently. Turkeys shall not be hunted with a rifle greater than a 22 caliber. Rifles and pistols greater than 23 caliber may be used for hunting deer during the prescribed open season only when hunting from an elevated platform at least 8 feet in the air or above the ground, except such weapons may be discharged on the ground when necessary to dispatch deer wounded from the elevated platform. Being elevated 8 foot above the ground, you are more likely to be shooting at a downward angle and would create a safe backstop for that bullet in case you missed. Rifles are more accurate than shotguns because you utilize a scope in lieu of spray and pray. If anybody knows what spray and pray is, you load your shotgun up with 5 shots, you shoot and hope and pray you hit the deer. Okay. Some new muzzleloaders rifles have a range of 400 to 500 yards. The hunter is more likely to harvest a deer rather than wounding it with buckshot. I've lived in the county for 18 years and have never heard of any rifle-related accidents with a muzzleloader rifle. You are permitted to use a high-powered rifle from the ground to shoot groundhogs, coyotes, which coyotes are, you shoot those at night. You are permitted to target practice while on the ground in King George. I have the past 2 years, the accident report that Frank spoke about earlier. There's only been 2 related rifle accidents in the state of Virginia in the past 2 years, and those were because somebody wasn't properly tied off in a tree stand and they fell from the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. Next on the list, Ms. Lavelle. No? Okay, gotcha. Zoe Norton?
Hi, my name's Zoe Norton. I reside at 4599 Sequoia Lane in King George County. I've been living in King George County since 2004, and I've enjoyed deer hunting my entire childhood. In fact, Mr. Rick Herron was the man who accompanied me on my first youth hunt. I've also been very active in the shooting sports. I was a part of the King George High School's NJROTC air rifle team, as well as did long-distance high-power rifle shooting with the Virginia team called VFEMI. I'm here today to tell you why I think King George County should be a rifle county as opposed to a shotgun county. Rifle hunting is more humane than shotgun hunting as it's more likely to result in cleaner kills. This reduces the likelihood of having to track deer long distances onto adjoining properties. Rifles are more likely to drop a deer once impacted by the bullet, whereas with a shotgun hunting, you risk having to track the deer as it bleeds out and suffers. This can also be an issue when a deer crosses over onto property which you don't have permission to hunt on or track on. The hunter then, while the deer is getting farther away and continuing to suffer, has to talk to the property owner and get permission to track onto their land. By this point, the track could go cold and the deer suffers a meaningless death, or you don't get permission to go onto that property and track the deer again, the deer suffering a meaningless death. Rifle hunting is therefore more respectful to the deer. Finally, given the density of the forest and topography of King George County, rifle hunting poses no more of a danger than shotgun hunting does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Next up, Jake Brinson. Nope. Okay, pass. Aubrey Garner. Okay. Terry Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to repeat
what's already been said, but having been a longtime hunter for probably 60 years now, I did not state my address. I've been a resident of the county for 22 years at 14039 Black Castle Court. That's in the Meadows. This really, in considering this, it's just an extension of what's already being used in the county. Right? Rifles are being used now to shoot varmints, coyotes, foxes, groundhogs from the ground. I would urge that I would like to see it done from elevation. If you're going to hunt deer, it should be, I think, from an elevated stand. That way you're always shooting into the ground. I'm a down southeastern North Carolina guy where the whole area is as flat as this floor here, and we were told for years that the reason you couldn't use rifles there was because you might kill somebody a half a mile away. So I fully support the use of rifles. I think it's more humane, it's a better kill, and it's, as was previously stated, lessens the chance of wounding and losing an animal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mark Fike.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mark Fike. I live at 8192 Dakota Drive here in King George County. I appreciate your time and the fact that you're allowing us to speak on this. I'm also in support of this proposal. I think the previous speakers that spoke in favor of it did an excellent job. I'm looking at my notes and they've covered pretty much everything. The one thing I would add is there are such thing as damage permits for farmers that are losing crops to deer. I have actually been on those permits several times. Those permits allow you to shoot deer with rifles, with lights at night. I'm not aware of any incidents. I don't think I'm the only one that's been on those permits. As previous speakers have said, I think most people that use a rifle are going to be a lot more careful about their shot because they want to make that one round impact where it needs to hit. Whereas if you're firing buckshot, you're looking at 9 pellets, sometimes 12 pellets, depending on what you're using, maybe even more. And that's a lot of projectiles going down range that can ricochet or what have you versus the one. So I would hope that you would, think about that. Again, I think everybody else hit every point I had. Buckshot seems to be the accident causer for a lot of incidents that we hear about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. Chris Rollins.
Chair, Board, appreciate your time. I reside at 14312 Ridge Road, King George, Virginia. Resided in the Shiloh District for the last 40 years. I'm here in support as well, and like everybody else, going to hit some of the keynotes right quick for you. So, primary concern is going to be safety, right? Buckshot versus rifle. When you hear rifle, everybody's instantly thinking, like they said, going to be greater ranges. One thing to consider, you got one round down range as opposed to like Mark hit on 9 to 18 to 54. Spray and pray was brought up. It's most commonly when you're deer hunting or doing drives. Most of the basically deaths and or injuries are resulted just from that. You know what I mean? Guys are spraying the brush and or 18 pellets are going to continue on a trajectory and continue to spread when they leave the muzzle of that shotgun. So you can't really account for where those pellets are going, as opposed to a rifle tends to stay, as they've already said, on target and on track, okay? A couple other keynotes here I just want to bring up. Rifles are currently being used countywide. They've said it before for nuisance animals, indoor target practice. It's not uncommon. You go out any day of the week or the weekend, you're going to hear those rounds being put down range. There's some concerns. I've heard it as far as population density. Our neighbors to the west, the south, you know what I mean, the north, everybody around us, and even some of them, Spotsylvania and Stafford, that have a higher density of population currently allow this, you know what I mean? More humane harvest. So basically a rifle round's gonna maintain its ballistics downrange, as opposed to shotgun and even muzzle loaders have a tendency, they're gonna fall off and lose that. So what does that mean? It's a more humane, quicker kill. The animal's less likely to go on a neighboring property. The animal's more likely to be recovered and used as opposed to wasted and or left. It's also going to encourage basically our newer hunters and our youth hunters. If you've ever been in the woods and lost an animal, it's not a good feeling. So if you're first time out, let's say you made a bad shot or a marginal shot and you track that animal but you don't recover it, you're probably far less likely to take that shot or be discouraged to take that shot next time. The 8 to 10 foot in a tree is good. Do I think it's necessarily a need? No. Like I said before, I got one round down range as opposed to multiples, but that's just another safety factor in the equation. If I'm in a tree, that's going to change the trajectory of the bullet. It's inevitably headed toward the ground. So it's not headed basically out in the abyss to the neighboring house, neighboring property. So once again, I thank you guys for the time. I urge you to consider and pass this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. Ken Stroud.
Ken Stroud, 5405 Kings Highway. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Everything's been pretty much said, except, ma'am, you mentioned the 10-foot height, and I agree with Mr. Herron, with the Caroline County identifies 8 feet in the Section 88 of the game regulations. So to agree with everything that's been said, the only 2 points that I would really call out is the ability to make a more humane kill with a rifle, 1 shot, 1 kill, more precision shots, and then also to highlight the fact that they have been used for years for the kill permits, so, and been done safely and not from elevated positions necessarily. So, the elevated position is just an added safety. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud. That is the end of my sign-up sheet. Is there anyone that has come in and wants to speak that was not on the sheet? Mr. Cliff, step right up.
Good evening, Board. Billy Cliff, 13188 Salem Church Road, King George, Virginia. I second most of what was said tonight. A lot of, high-powered or long-range muzzle loaders already in use, rifles already in use for various other types of hunting varmints and so forth. But one of the biggest advantages I see for rifles is our youth. I've seen a lot of youth turned off from hunting because of the impact that a slug gun or a shotgun puts on their bodies, where a small caliber 243 or something of that nature is very little kick. It doesn't jolt them. It doesn't deter them from shooting a gun again. So I think that's very beneficial to keeping the youth involved, keeping them out in wildlife hunting in that environment. And that's all I have to say. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online? Okay. Anybody received written statements?
I did receive a written statement from Mr. Fike. Is your statement good enough, Mr. Fike? Okay.
Mrs. Kupka, you and I got one.
Yes, I received the same one that you received, and then I received a different one from another constituent.
Okay. You want to go ahead with those?
Sure.
Just paraphrase them. I know one's a very long technical one.
Yeah, this one from the other citizen wrote, Ms. Kupka, I am an avid hunter and have had great success in King George over the years. The rules for allowable weapons in King George for hunting have been in place for many years, and the longer I explored hunting grounds in King George, the more apparent I have found that the wisdom and reasoning that went into those rules for King George still stand. I live at the edge of an open field that is hunted. I have been standing outside talking to neighbors when shot has rained down on us from that field. I recognize that this example is shotgun and not rifle-based. However, the point is still valid. Any high-powered rifle shot can, instead of raining down, could very well be pointed in our direction, and a miss could be fatal to innocent bystanders. The truth is, this is true all over King George, and it would be extremely difficult to develop rules for rifle hunting that would keep King George safe while providing a little added capability to hunters that they simply don't really need in King George. If rifle hunting is desired, it is available elsewhere. I would not recommend establishing such a precedent in King George that could then be used as an argument for pursuing the same rule changes in other localities. In short, allowing large caliber rifles for hunting in King George is not safe and is not needed. And I would not want to be the supervisor that could be blamed for a rifle-based fatality because they supported a change that allowed that to happen. Thanks for the consideration. Respectfully, Tony Scaramosi, a resident of King George County. And do you want me to just summarize the other one?
I guess, I mean, we can add that to the minutes. It's a very long one.
Sure. Good afternoon. I am a resident in Jeff's district, residing on Peachtree Lane. I had initially planned to attend tonight's meeting. Let's see. He is a senior product brand manager for Franchi. Did I say that right? It's a subsidiary of Benelli USA. I'll just leave it at that. I think everyone knows what that is. Let's see. I believe this makes me uniquely qualified to comment on this topic tonight. With that said, there are really only two agreed upon reasons to limit cartridge calibers used for hunting. The first is an attempt to prevent uncontrollable additional travel due to winter conditions. In prolonged cold temperatures, the ground can freeze enough where a lightweight bullet will literally skip across frozen ground. Let's see, the reality is the first reason for limited cartridges calibers does not apply to King George County. We simply don't see the prolonged sub-freezing temperatures required to have some effect on the ground. And then the second is an attempt to provide a backstop to hunter judgment. The reason for this is because of the added weight or mass of the projectile causes it to fall much further than a traditional round. Ergo, the perception is that this reduced range can limit accidental collateral damage in the event that a hunter takes a reckless or unsafe shot. At the end of the day, I'll conclude it here. At the end of the day, the safety of any shot taken with a firearm is 100% the responsibility of the person pulling the trigger. No amount of government regulation or requirement is going to prevent someone from doing something that safety suggests they should not. As long as hunters continue to practice acceptable levels of hunter safety while in the field, either of my aforementioned solutions should be a perfectly reasonable and, more importantly, safe solution for our ever-growing county. Oh, that was Brett Maffett.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Then I will close public comment. I do that. And bring it to the board.
I move to adopt an ordinance to amend and reordain sections 10-6 and 10-7 of the King George County Code to exercise local authority to allow deer hunting with rifles as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Can we open up for discussion if there's any? Questions, comments?
May I just ask a question of our constitutional officer in residence?
Absolutely.
Sheriff Giles.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a roll call vote on this, please?
So Sheriff Giles, as the chief law enforcement professional in our community, do you have any issues whatsoever with what is being suggested here today?
No, ma'am, I don't. I'm in favor of it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Mr. Collins? Okay, I mean, I had I had been approached by a number of people about this, and also heard about it the last couple of years, and, you know, looking at what we're allowed to do now, you know, with, you know, smaller caliber guns at night and, for groundhog or woodchucks. And they, you know, we're allowed to do it now, and as they stated, you know, with kill permits, we do have a lot of rifle shooting as it is now. I am not a deer hunter anymore, but I have fired a gun once or twice in my life. And you know, with today's black powder guns, I did a little bit of research, and some of these new black powder guns shoot 1,000 yards, a 45 caliber round at 1,000 yards. So really, you know, what's the difference of a black powder gun that shoots 1,000 yards or a 270 or a 308? So I didn't think it was very much at all. So I am in favor of this as well. So we do have a motion properly seconded, and if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, if we can, if we want to take just a 5-minute break for all you folks that if you want to leave, or you can hang out here and stay and listen to the rest of our meeting. If you all want to leave, you can go, and we'll get back to it here in just a second. All right, we'll call this meeting back to order and get on with it. 403, presentations and reports, which we don't have. And up next will be action items. So Ms. Turner, Department of Finance, award of a pre-construction agreement for the courthouse CMAR.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Angela Turner, Procurement Specialist, here before you today asking the award of an agreement for a pre-construction service associated with the King George County Courthouse project. In December 2021, proposals were received from construction firms in response to RFP 1129-2021-1400 for construction services associated with the new courthouse project. The project consists of construction of a new courthouse of approximately 50,000 square feet in size and provisions for future expansions up to 65,800 square feet. The new courthouse will be located on approximately 5.5 acres of the county-owned land located across from the sheriff's office. The project will be delivered under the construction manager at-risk delivery method. At its meeting on January 18th, 2022, the King George County Board of Supervisors adopted the guidelines for selection, evaluation, and award of construction management at-risk contracts. In January 2022, the proposals were evaluated by a selection committee consisting of Chris Miller, Sheriff Giles, Vic Mason, Rick Herron, Travis Quisenberry, and Gary Westfall of Mosley Architects. Based on the proposals, non-binding estimates of probable construction costs, and interviews with the 5 highest ranked firms, the selection committee ranked Branch Bills, Inc. as part of the qualified firm for this project and commenced discussions and negotiations with Branch. In order to finalize their guaranteed maximum price, Branch must complete certain pre-construction services. As previously stated, King George County desires to procure the services of Branch to construct the new King George County Courthouse using the CMAR delivery method. This delivery method includes a phase for pre-construction services during which Branch will review the construction documents to develop construction pricing, a construction schedule, and value engineering proposals for consideration by the county. The pre-construction services require a significant level of effort and commitment from Branch as it develops a strategy to deliver the new King George County Courthouse in the most cost-effective manner. Branch will perform the following list of pre-construction services. As noted in the list, Branch has commenced work in good faith on several of the pre-construction services. Development of preliminary project schedule, which would be mutually agreed upon by the county, Mosley Architects, and Branch Bills. Review of architect and initial budget. Value engineering ideas for evaluation. Constructability review. Development of the GMP based on permitted construction documents developed by Mosley Architects. List of potential long lead items. All items above will be coordinated with the design architect. Authorize the county administrator to take the following actions. Issue a notice of award to Branch Bills, Inc. for pre-construction services associated with the new King George County project in the amount of $54,400. Authorize the county administrator to execute an agreement with Branch Bills, Inc. in the amount of $54,400 for pre-construction services associated with the new King George County Courthouse project, subject to approval as formed by the county attorney. Funds that have been previously appropriated in the capital fund for this project are adequate for the pre-construction services.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Turner? Questions, Mr. Collins? I would just ask maybe Mrs. Lackey or Mr. Bell, if he's still online, maybe just to give just a quick recap exactly what the CMAR is and for the public, and just a reminder.
Sure. The CMAR is Construction Management at Risk, which is kind of a a mouthful, but it means that you hire a firm that's going to directly manage the project, and they will supervise the construction and organize the labor to perform the construction. So this process, this step is to award a pre-construction agreement so that they can find subcontractors to do the work, and they will propose a guaranteed maximum price. So it's a different style of project delivery. So instead of receiving bids and then potentially having lots of change orders, this process is one where there's risk on the firm that's selected to do the work, because they're going to give you what the guaranteed price is to do the work. Now, that's not to say that there could not potentially be change orders if there's changes in the scope of the work, but it's considered to be less risk of having significant cost overruns.
Thank you. So do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award to Branch Builds Incorporated for pre-construction services associated with the new King George County Courthouse project in the amount of $54,400.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion?
Friendly amendment? Do we need to also authorize the county administrator to execute an agreement with Branch Builds
Yes.
Incorporated in the amount of $54,400 for pre-construction services associated with the new King George County Courthouse project, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney?
We do. I was going to make a second motion after this. No, it's fine. I don't know if we could do them both together. I'd like to do them. It was two actions, so I was going to do them separate, but I don't know.
I think we could do them together.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion to amend my original motion to include authorizing the county administrator to execute an agreement with Branch Builds Incorporated in the amount of $54,400 for pre-construction services associated with the new King George County Courthouse project, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next up, 0405, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, TAC application, Dahlgren Heritage Museum, Route 3, supposed to be 301, Clear Channel Billboard. Mr. Minor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the board. The Dahlgren Heritage Museum has partnered with Topside Federal Credit Union to secure 2 billboards on the Maryland side of the Nice Middleton Memorial Bridge on the southbound lane of US 301, advertising the museum as open. Topside Federal Credit Union is contributing $1,200. The museum is contributing $1,100 and requesting the balance of $1,100 from the tourism fund. The purpose of the billboard is to encourage visitors to visit the museum, to learn more about King George and local events in the county. The billboard advertisement will run the month of July 2022 and potentially may continue through August at no charge. After review, the TAC recommends that the BOS approve $1,100 funding for the Dahlgren Heritage Museum Route 301 Clear Channel Billboard. Staff agrees with TAC's recommendations.
Any questions for Mr. Minor?
I do have one question for Ms. Lackey. Can I vote on this since I'm on the Dahlgren Heritage Board?
If it's an unpaid position, then yes.
Yes, I'm just appointed as a supervisor. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, I have one. Mr. Minor, is that the billboards, is that right there at the truck stop, or just as you're coming down the hill, or is it up the road farther? Do you know exactly?
Mr. Chair, they did explain it to me at the TAC presentation. I do not remember, I do not recall it. But the way they explained it was just after their visitor center that they have there in Charles County. So that probably is the one that they're referring to.
Okay, and that's just it's gonna be just an advertisement for the museum, open and.
Exactly, and they will also include Visit King George and the Visit King George logo.
Good. Okay. No more questions. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve $1,100 of funding for the Dahlgren Heritage Museum Route 301 Clear Channel Billboard from the Tourism Fund as presented.
Second.
Motion properly second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes. And up again, Mr. Minor, 407, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, TAC application, King George, oh, nope, I missed one. 406, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, TAC application, Jazz in the Country. How could I miss that? The third annual Benefit Jazz Festival.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jazz in the Country is requesting $22,050 from the Tourism Fund for their marketing of their third annual Benefit Jazz Festival. Marketing began in January 2022 and will continue until August of 2022. It is an intensely driven social media marketing campaign which includes radio, newspaper, and music/festival websites, Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads. Marketing will reach throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, with Visit King George promoted on their marketing platforms. After review, the TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve the $22,050 funding for the Jazz in the Country. There should also be a note on here that this would need to be funded through the Tourism Fund, the General Balance Fund, which comes down to the staff's recommendations that we recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve $12,000 for Jazz in the Country. Staff's recommendation is based on operating budget for this fiscal year. So to fund fully, we would need to be allocated an additional $6,000 to reach that $20,050. Am I saying that correctly? No, not 6, 8. 8,050.
So the 12,000 that staff recommended, you can do that out of the
Operating budget
operating.
we have now.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And at some point, Mr. Chair, I'd like to also give Jazz in the Country a moment to speak if they'd like.
Sure. Come right on up.
Good evening. My name is Joan Waters with Jazz in the Country. We want to thank Tourism and Department of Economic Development for their support and your support. Again, we're excited this being our third festival. And so I just wanted to quickly tell you the top 5 reasons that we have come up with that you should fund us fully for as we requested. Number 1 is that we continue to grow in popularity and attendance. And the main reason is because it's a great day. It's a great cause supporting Mount Bethel Retreat Center. And it's a great time to have people come to King George for live music on the waterfront. We also believe that our marketing reach far outweighs other local events that primarily target local residents. And that is in support really of tourism's goal to make King George a destination and not a drive-through. We also invite and encourage our jazz family to explore King George beyond our event. We heavily promote the Visit King George site in our marketing efforts and on our website. Our list of partnerships and supporters with local small businesses increases every year. And additionally, we also, in partnership with some other local nonprofits, bringing to Mount Bethel a Juneteenth event in June. And so we believe that will also bring others to the area. Believe it or not, a lot of folks still don't know about Mount Bethel, don't know about King George, though they might live 20 minutes away, and they don't visit or have a reason to in their mind. So we're really, really excited about that Juneteenth event, and I'll leave information here for you if you haven't heard of it. And we would like to thank Parks and Recs for their commitment to help with that event, coordinating children's activities that day. So full support from you buttresses our impact and our continued success. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, could you state the date again? I think there was.
The date of the festival is August 27th.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Questions, anybody for Mr. Minor or anything? Mr. Granger?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Minor, you were saying the recommendation from staff was 12,000 because that would exhaust the operating budget for this current fiscal year?
Correct.
And so if the board were to want to fully fund, it would have to come out of the fund balance, the additional amount.
Correct. So
Okay.
fund balance would be 8,050.
Would it be 8,000 or would it be 10,000? Because I see
12,000 to reach that 22, it would be, I'm sorry, I'm not good at.
10,050, right?
Yes, exactly right.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that right. No worries. I'll ask my colleagues. I know, ma'am, I apologize. I know you gave your name. I'm terrible when people give their names. I always forget. I'm sorry?
Waters.
Waters? Miss Waters. Can I ask you a quick question as well? I'm really sorry. Like I said, I'm bad with names and please don't take offense to that. Okay. So this is your third year, and I know that it's been growing, the attendance. Do you know the numbers? I know you gave an after action report. I just don't remember off the top of my head. The number of people that came the first year and how many came the second year?
Yes, we sold a little over 100 tickets in 2019, our inaugural event. Last year, we had to skip 2020, of course, because of the pandemic. But last year, that number tripled to a little over 300.
Yes, ma'am.
So we think it's not hard to expect at least 500 this year. Our marketing is increasing, so
Yes, ma'am.
that's
Okay.
our hope.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Then I'll ask my colleagues before motions are made. I would actually be willing to entertain fully funding and pulling from the fund balance, but I'll leave it to my colleagues to speak how they feel about it as well.
I know we did 15.5 last year for them, so.
So I actually found the after action report from that you presented to us. I think it was back in October of 2021, ma'am. So there were 133 attendees from Virginia, 66 of those were from King George, 67 were not from King George. There were 121 attendees from Maryland. There were 56 attendees from Washington, D.C., and there were 10 hotel rooms that were occupied as a result. So I mean, given that, and this is, you've kept your word every time you have come back and you have provided us with an after action to show us that your numbers have increased. You are doing what you said you would do with the money. So I would be in favor of, or I'd be in agreement with Mr. Granger's suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Collins? Questions?
Do we get an invitation?
I have a quick question for Ms. Waters. How much do you think with this extra funds you'll really be able to expand out of the region, maybe up to Delaware, Pennsylvania, or?
Excuse me. Yes, because they can't hear it at home.
We have a partner actually in Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh. It's an internet company called iJazz Global that will live stream parts of the festival that day, and they've already started marketing through their e-blast, our event. So we're reaching more and more people each year.
And then my last question is, how many people can fit in that at Mount Bethel?
We estimate that we could probably get 1,000 or more. We doubt if we would ever go to that number because we want to have a family atmosphere. We don't want people tripping all over each other, to give people a reason to come back. Because when you go to the larger festivals, it's just people on top of people. And that's not the type of environment that we want. So we're still sort of throwing that number around. It could be 700 max that we might, and then consider having a 2-day event. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. So I went to the first one, and it was well organized. It was, the parking was great. I mean, there were coming in, the signage was good. All the safety concerns seemed to be up to par and even better. It was a wonderful festival. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Mr. Granger.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Minor as well. I appreciate your recommendations lower, but from the idea of being fiscally responsible, and I appreciate you taking that account and bringing to our attention that it would move into the fund balance at that point. As I said before, though, I think they have demonstrated that they are bringing people from outside the county. I do think it's worth it to dip into that fund balance at this point. But thank you for coming with that perspective as well. So thank you.
No problem.
And so if we were to make a motion, would I have to address that a certain amount would come out of the operating fund and then the other rest would come from fund balance? I see Ms. Hahn shaking her head, yes. So, okay. I'm sorry, that's all I have.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the Jazz in the Country Incorporated Third Annual Benefit Jazz Festival request in the amount of $22,050, with $12,000 coming from the Tourism Operating Fund and $10,050 coming from the Tourism Fund Balance, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. Any discussion? My only discussion is I think it was a great event, and like they said before, y'all have certainly done your homework and what was done, and hope we get a nice cooler day this time, and to get some more people out there, because it gets right steamy out there in August, but it's a great event. So, all right, we have a motion properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Congratulations. Moving on now, Mr. Clark, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, tax application, Mr. Minor, tax application for King George Parks and Recreation, Christmas or holiday decorations for power poles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one more for the board tonight. Parks and Recreation is requesting funding to replace the county's holiday decorations that are currently displayed on Route 3 through the center of King George from late November through early January. The lights are rapidly aging, and the Department of General Properties has repaired displays numerous times. Bulbs for the current lights are becoming more difficult to find and more expensive each year. Beautifying our downtown area for the holiday showcases the charm of King George to our residents and visitors. We are requesting $20,000 from the Tourism Fund Balance for this project. After review, the TAC recommends that the board approve $20,000 funding for the holiday decorations for power poles. Staff agrees with tax recommendations and requests funding from the Tourism Fund Balance.
Any questions for Mr. Minor? So you're gonna go into the fund balance, you said?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve $20,000 funding for the Christmas decorations for power poles from the Tourism Fund Balance as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up, discussion items. Don't think we have any. County Administrator's Report.
Yeah, it's short. I would point out it is something that's not on there. And I made a mention of it at the Service Authority Board meeting, but the November 23rd, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting, there was reference to the CARES Act funds being approved, projects under the CARES Act funds being approved. They are actually ARP funds for 21 or for 21. So I just need to reference that. It'll be in the minutes. Ms. Hahn 21-22 fiscal year. So that's for our auditors. Okay. Just to let you know on the courthouse, so we are in phase 1 right now, the courthouse parking lot. Project phase 1 is the installation of a drain line that runs essentially back towards the back of the property and then comes out in the back of the courthouse. And that is, as I think Mr. Muncy has explained, that will address some of the water issues that the courthouse has right now. The next phase will be to begin the paving process, and they're working right now on that bid. Is it out right now, Ms. Hahn? Okay.
And I didn't check the exact date. It's either, she's got 2 out right now. Closes on the 20th and another on the 27th. So it's one of those 2 dates, so the end of the month.
Supervisor Bender had a conversation with me about 2 things. One is the possibility of re-landscaping the islands that we have. If you have looked, I believe at one time there were trees in those islands. So I have asked Mr. Muncy to get me some quotes to do some different landscaping in the existing islands. Obviously, we would want to coordinate that around the paving work, so that it wouldn't impact that. The other thing that Supervisor Bender had also brought up, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you talk about it.
You're talking about the time capsule?
Yes.
So there is a time capsule in one of those islands. I think it's the one that's closest to this building. And so the Historical Society notified me of it. It was put there in 2000. So they just wanted to make sure it was found and dug up. And they were interested in putting a new time capsule at the new courthouse. So just to make sure that we find it when the parking lot is dug up. Thank you.
Okay. The other item on there is, so the All Points Broadband, in their efforts with the broadband project, they are going to discuss some things with us about looking for some storage area, and also to place some 10 by 10 boxes that are associated with the project. We are, I think they're looking for county property, and when you start to look into the Dahlgren area, there's some limitations in terms of the amount of space, but we will be working with them. I don't know if it'll require board action, but I just want to keep you informed. If it does require board action, we would bring it back to you. Also, provided at your desk was just a notification of a resignation from Mr. Wernsman, who is the director of the Tri-County City Soil and Water Board. This is another elected official in the county. And I believe Mr. Wernsman is citing personal reasons. And it is my understanding from interactions with Ms. Gump, your registrar, that this is a board that they will fill this position. They'll fill it they can fill it in an interim capacity. The next election is in 2023. It is my understanding that they may reach out to the board, to the chair or to other members to see if you have anybody that you might recommend, but it is completely handled by them. It is their authority to do what they want to do with it. So just to keep you informed, he submitted it to me, so I thought you ought to know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask for consensus of the board to direct staff to send Mr. Wernsman a letter expressing our appreciation for his longtime service to our community in this capacity?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Miller?
That's all I have.
I would just say when we replant islands, we look for trees that are a little bit less aggressive in the root system and kind of do almost what Mary Washington did, where they have all the native grasses and stuff that do much better in parking lots.
Mr. Chair, I want to bring up one thing, because the reason why I brought this up to Mr. Miller is when I sat out there during election season, I saw all the, I looked at all the plantings, and especially Sylvester had to keep cutting that, whatever that is, ground cover out there that looks terrible. And, maybe get rid of it and make it look really nice. We have beautiful trees out there, and just spruce it up. It's bad to have a new parking lot with some ugly islands, make it look a little better.
Maybe all 5 of us can come and do a yard day there, clean up the parking lot or the front yard. Right, Mr. Collins?
I do enough at home, thanks.
Okay. Okay, if nothing more from Mr. Miller, information items, pending appointments, boards and commissions. And moving on from there, I guess we have a motion.
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 and A8 to discuss the performance of an appointee to the Planning Commission and for consultation with legal counsel regarding legal advice associated with conduct of an appointee. I invite the county administrator and county attorney because they are deemed necessary and/or their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the topics to be discussed pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712F.
Second.
Motion properly second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are in closed session. Do we have a motion?
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second, and if we could all members certify.
So certify.
So certify.
So certify.
Certify.
Chair so certifies. We are in open session. We have a motion.
I move to adjourn until Wednesday, April 6th at 5:30 PM in the boardroom.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.